Introducing Zach Davis and Josh Anderson with the SoundMoney Podcast.
Hello, welcome to this week's episode of Sound Money, Sound Principles, the Believers Podcast. My name's Josh Anderson here with Zach Davis. How are you today, Zach?
I'm doing awesome. Hey, Josh. Hey, everybody. We're glad you're on with us today.
Man, what an awesome day. Zach, we just got home from our annual sales convention for 7K Metals. We were in Las Vegas all last week with 1,500 of the top salespeople in that company. And man, it is awesome to be around entrepreneurs. In today's world where there's just such a lack of entrepreneurship and people who are fighting for common causes, people who are out there making a difference in the world, it is so awesome to have a venue every year where we get together with like-minded entrepreneurs in our company from all around the world, from Switzerland, Austria, Canada, Australia, and all over the United States. Almost all 50 states were represented, and have just such a powerful thing. You know, Zach, do you have any takeaways from that? Like maybe you felt or what it was for your soul to be around those entrepreneurs this past week?
Yeah, no, it was awesome, Josh. It's kind of interesting because you know, in building your own businesses and doing your own thing, sometimes you get so close to the forest that you can't see the trees, right? And you get so myopic about what problems you're trying to solve, and you know, you can get a little bit frustrated sometimes, and you can have too many meetings in a row where you run into some roadblocks, and you start thinking, man, how are we going to get this across the finish line? And so, you know, the chance to go down and mingle with all these people that have they're like-minded, they're all entrepreneur, they want to do something different in their life, they're all building their own businesses, you know, they're fighting for their dreams. They're all doing the same thing we are, right? Getting uncomfortable and, getting, you know, money zone, comfort zone, worlds apart. And so for me, what it does, it really does just make you start thinking about what you're trying to do in the world again, right? And the vision, the mission of what you're really after. And, you know, you can kind of take a step back for a second from all the problems that you're trying to solve. And, you know, you get to hear everybody else's problems. You go, well, my problems aren't too bad, right? maybe I'll take my problems. But it really just, it gives you a breath of fresh air, like to see those people and be involved with people that are trying to do the same, give you courage to go back and fight your own battles. So it was awesome. I loved it.
You know, I'm glad you said that, because it does give you some power and some amazing feeling to be around like-minded people. Part of what I love about that company and what we do there is the people. And we had an opportunity there inside that. We realize we have listeners that have no idea what we do in some of these companies, but that company makes really unique coins around the world, and it tells stories through gold and silver coins. And we've been building a project that came to fruition there. It was a 6-coin series of the life of John F. Kennedy. For me, I think he's one of the most prolific, profound presidents we've had in the last 150 years in particular, to make a difference for the common person, right? And that's, by the way, it's hard for me to say when he was of a political party that I don't always agree with, but I can recognize his qualities. And it was really fun for us because in the culmination of this project, Zach, you and I have been able to meet a lot with presidential candidate for 2024, Robert F. Kennedy. You and I both had lots of private meetings with him, texts and phone calls over the last 6 months on a lot of business things not only in the presidential race, but things that involve business and the industries that we're in. And, you know, so for me, it was pretty special to have him pop in and participate with us in that venue, in sharing about his visions for America, like his uncles before and his fathers before, and to be able to just share that experience with him and us. And so to me, that was just an incredible experience for the week.
Yeah, no, it was awesome. And I think, so here's something that I've always found very, very interesting, Josh. You know, everybody says, don't talk about religion, don't talk about politics, right?
Yeah, they do.
You're going to get in trouble somewhere. So everybody talks about sports. And you know how I feel about that.
I do know how you feel. We're all polar opposites.
But here's what's really interesting is whether you I think people who look, judging is really easy. Thinking is really hard. So that's why we judge, right? Yeah. Because thinking is hard. So one of the things that I admire most about Bobby Kennedy, is he is a critical thinker. And I've watched as he's been asked questions and I have asked him questions. He doesn't just have these canned answers like a regular politician. It's like, oh, this is what my campaign told me to say. He's not afraid to say, you know what? I don't know. I'm not informed enough about this issue. I need to go do the research, or come back and say, well, that's not, the research I've done. That's not what I found. And sometimes he splits from what his political party is on issues. And this is one I've been thinking about this a lot for entrepreneurs and people who are trying to do great things in the world. Oftentimes we get stuck in these lanes, right? Where it's like, well, I'm a Republican, and so I can only think like a Republican. I can only associate with Republicans, or I'm a Democrat. I can only think with, or libertarian, or whatever political party or even religious affiliation that you are. And what we do is when we hear other people that are in a different lane, we sort of like close our ears because we're like, oh, no, I don't want to hear that. Because if they say something that actually might be true, it challenges our very core belief system. And a lot of people are not, they're not big enough to admit the fact that they might be wrong. And so it's one thing I appreciate about him. And it's also one thing that I have tried to do as I've, been in these circles with these guys is go, hey, okay, I don't align everything with his political views, but you know what? You can either be right or you can be rich. But you can't be both, right? And so I can let go of this preconceived notion that I have, and I can look into this issue and go, I might be wrong about this. And he might be right, and not attach a political party to it or religious affiliation or whatever, and say, the facts are the facts. And I can change my opinion and change my thought process. And that's been something really fun as we've associated with these guys to be able to have that sort of mind shift.
And isn't that, Zach, really what entrepreneurship really is? Isn't it really being able to analyze all the data, all the relevant data on a business or on a business opportunity, analyze it in such a way that your preconceived notions don't lead you down a path that it's inaccurate or that closes you off to the opportunity, right? You and I have had the luxury in life, right, to be surrounded by amazing entrepreneurs, men and women who have changed the entire landscape of the earth, right? Men and women our business partners and our friends are some of the most influential men and women in the world. And I consider ourselves just beyond blessed for that, right? But those characteristics you just spoke of, I'm thinking of several of those men and women, and they embody those things. They don't preconceive. They don't judge a book by its cover. They don't box themselves into a little tiny narrow box and say, this is the only ideology that I can listen to or believe in. And man, I wish more people could do that. We live in a divisive world. We need more people to do that. And that actually leads us into, Zach, today's discussion. I just think it's going to be fun today to hear some of this, but I just want to take a few minutes today and kind of share the genesis of your and my entrepreneurial beginnings. Everybody has a something they start when they're an entrepreneur. There's always that first leap off moment when they decide, I'm actually going to jump off the diving board. I'm going to jump off this cliff today. I don't know what's going to happen when I hit the water. And I just think it'd be great for our listeners to be able to hear from us, like how those things started for us. And then as we have other guests on, we have some amazing episodes coming up. We're going to hear that from a lot of the top business-minded people in America. Where did their genesis of entrepreneurship begin? And I don't mean, like, I'm not really talking about paper routes and out here in the West changing pipe or shoveling horse manure, right? Like, those are things that y'all young boys in the West do. But I'm talking about when you actually made a decision to start a business. And what did what was that like? What did you learn? What happened? What fears maybe did you have? What did you have to overcome? And I think I know where you might go, but I didn't ask you ahead of time. Like, this is the beauty, by the way. If you know anything about Zach and I, there's nothing very scripted about these episodes. This is a couple of bullet points of what we're going to talk about for the week. But I didn't ask you ahead of time. I think I know where you might go, but I might be wrong. So, take it away for a minute. What is some of your genesis beginnings of the entrepreneurial mindset?
Yeah, so I've had a lot of years to reflect upon, back on my experience. I've had a lot of people ask me how I get started, and it's interesting because hopefully we'll have him on one of these episodes and he can tell his experience. But so Roger Ball, one of our business partners, served with Senator Kemp Thorne here in the state of Idaho on a committee to, ask the question: are entrepreneurs made or are they born? Right? Can you make an entrepreneur or are they just born? So I don't know the answer to that. I don't know for me if I was born an entrepreneur, I was made an entrepreneur. I haven't really tried to answer that question, but it's kind of interesting. That's not what I wanted to do for a living. So most entrepreneurs are like, it's what I always wanted to do. I always wanted to build a business. And so a lot of people who want to build a business, they think that like, or think about starting a business are like, well, I need to be born with this drive to build a business. That wasn't me. Like, I seriously, you know what? I'm born 200 years too late.
Amen. You are. Yes, you are.
I want to sit on the back of the horse. I'd have rode with Billy the Kid. I'd have robbed banks. I'd have rounded up cows. Like, that's what I loved, right? It's the farming and ranching industry. And so that's it. In high school, just before high school, I went and worked for one of the biggest outfits in the United States. I was recruited out of college to go work for the King Ranch down in South Texas and go to their elite King Ranch Institution of Ranch Management. It's like they take two kids a year. And it's a 3-year program, like all these really cool things, right? And so that's what I was going to do. I wanted to run and operate farms and ranches. I love horses, I love cattle, and I love being outdoors. Well, I got married in that process. Things changed, okay? And so it was like, I wasn't going to do that anymore because it didn't align with both my wife and I's goals. And that was something that was really important to me. So I'm sitting here with a year left in school going, okay, I'm getting an animal science degree and an agribusiness degree, and I'm not going to go use this now. And so I was sort of backed into a corner with like, I couldn't get a job. Josh, I called every feed sales company. I called every fertilizer company, like everyone. I called them. I didn't want any of those jobs, but I was like, well, what am I going to do for a living now to provide for my family? And I couldn't get a job. It was almost like, I believe in God. It was almost like God closed all those doors for me. It was like, nope, this is your path. And so I had a friend that was working over in the oil fields, and he called me one weekend. He said, hey, can you come up and help my dad work in the spuds? And I'm like, yeah, okay, great. So I went up and, was driving truck hauling spuds, and I called him like, dude, where are you? I haven't seen you all weekend. He's like, oh, I'm up in Wyoming hauling water. Like, for like hauling water to cows? Like, what are you talking about? He's like, no, I'm in the oil fields. I'm like, I'd never heard of it, Josh. Yeah. I mean, here in Idaho, it was like, we don't have any oil down here. But the oil fields were booming in Wyoming. And so, I'm like, well, I got nothing to do. So I go up to Wyoming, spend a week with him. And I'm like, I could do this. And so long story short, I came back and put a really light business plan together. Keep in mind, I'm in my early 20s. I don't got 2 pennies to rub together. I don't know what I'm doing. And I've never tried to start a real business before. I went to all these banks. I got turned down over and over and over again. But every bank that turned me down, I'd refine my business plan a little bit based on the questions they'd ask me, right? And the reasons they'd tell me it wouldn't work. And then I'd go back and be like, okay, I'll go answer that question, go meet with the next banker. I ended up getting a banker to buy in on the idea. He loaned me some money. I bought up some trucks. I went to Wyoming and I started a trucking company. I was scared to death. Now I was in debt, first time in my life. And so I actually named the company Black Ink Transport. And most people are like, oh, it's because you were hauling crude oil. Like, no, it's because I was in debt. And every day when I read the side of that truck, black ink, it reminded me to get out of the red ink at the bank and get into the black, right?
I love it.
Fighting to make some money. And so that was my first experience of really actually building a business. And it got me through college with no debt. It did really well. And I learned a ton of things through that. I don't have that business anymore, but through that business, I've just parlayed into the next thing, to next thing, to the next thing. So that was my first experience getting into it. And it was like being pushed and saying, you're going to go be an entrepreneur. And so go figure this out.
So Zach, it sounds like to me, it was born out of necessity.
100%. 100%.
And it's amazing to me how many times when I talk to entrepreneurs, that's a thread that just seems to go through all entrepreneurs, like a DNA strand almost, that born out of their first experiences are born out of necessity. Oftentimes their greatest, what I always say, like greatest hits, right? They're and by the way, an entrepreneur, a real entrepreneur doesn't ever own one business. That's just the reality. Like They own lots of them, and they've had lots of them. And that's why I don't call them their most successful businesses. I call them their greatest hits, because it's like an album, right? Like you've got all these songs that you've made in the world, and only a few of them are greatest hits. We don't listen to Creedence Clearwater Revival's, all their songs. We listen to the greatest hits, right? Or the Doobie Brothers, right? Like, it's just a reality. So, but most of the time, people's first business starts out of necessity. Yeah, I'm very similar, Zach. When I was 22 years old, newly married, now I got to provide for a wife and a young family coming. I decided, there wasn't a lot of jobs. I had 2 years left of college. And I thought, I need to go get a job that I can still go to school full time and work and, pay rent and food. And I remember going to this old folks home. They posted a job for a night watchman. And I thought, well, that would work, right? I could go to school all day and I could watch the door all night, right? At the old folks home. Make sure nobody escaped, really. It's what they're asking to do, okay? Later, by the way, my grandmother escaped from that place in the middle of the night. I had to go get her. So there was a watchman not doing his job. But anyway, here nor there. But I went and interviewed for this night watchman job. And I can remember it clear as day. It was an aha moment. I go in, I sit down, a really nice general manager lady. She offers me the job, $8.50 an hour. And she says, now, Josh, you'll be able to come in at 8 o'clock at night and then stay till 6 in the morning. And we'll pay $8.50, and you just got to watch the door. You can do your homework. And in the moment she said it, I thought, well, that would work. I could do that, right? Great. I walked out to the pickup. As I'm driving in the pickup, it dawns on me, I can't do that. I can't go to school all day and then watch a door all night long for $8.50. And I did the math, and I went, I'm never going to sleep except for on Saturday and Sunday. Literally. 2 hours to 3 hours a day. How am I going to make that work? And I had this thought, right? Like, in those moments of necessity, I realized I can't even do that and pay for like food and housing. So how am I going to make this work? And I had this thought, right? I had grown up my whole life. My uncle and my father had built kitchen cabinets, right? So growing up, I was taught the trait of how to build kitchen cabinets, right? And I had this thought process, and it's totally uneducated. I thought, why don't I just start my own cabinet business to pay for college? I wouldn't have to work all night long. I might only need 1 or 2 kitchens a month to make a lot more money than that. So if you know me, and Zach does, I'm not much for letting the grass grow under my feet. When the decision's made, it's made. And so I immediately called my brother, who was 18, had recently graduated high school, literally like a month before. Okay. And he wasn't going to go to college. He didn't want to do it. I said, hey, you don't want to go to college? Why don't you come and why don't we start a cabinet business? And we build kitchen cabinets. And he immediately, he's 18 years old. What's he going to say? Sweet. Yeah, let's do it, brother. And then I thought, well, I don't have any money. And similar to you, I didn't have any money. And so I went, and I knew my dad and my uncle had some extra tools they didn't use. I couldn't buy them. I didn't have money. So I went to him with this idea. I said, every job I get for the next year, I'm going to give you 10% of the sales price towards the tools. And one of us is going to win and one of us is going to lose. If I really kick butt, you're going to get a whole lot more money than what those tools are worth. If I really suck, you get the tools back and you get some money along the way. Call it rent. They said yes. They made way more money on those tools. Okay, 10% of the jobs, right? For a year. But I went and did that, right? And I'm not going to say it's rainbows and sunshine, Zach. Like, we literally, my wife and I and Jared, my brother, we were broke. That first year, every penny we made needed to go back to the business to buy another little tool or another little thing, or to hire a second or third employee to actually keep up, right? And so as I'm going to college, I am working my tail off, but making no money. I mean, barely in the poverty level, right? Like, barely enough to eat. Luckily, we like to hunt, Zach, right? Like, people might guess that if they look around our offices. We lived on elk meat and deer meat, right? My wife and I for that year, and my young son. But in that moment, I learned something about entrepreneurs, right? That has served me immensely well. Sometimes entrepreneurs just have to go make it happen and maybe even brag about themselves a little more than what the rest of the world might. So I recently took my son, my third son, I took him around the town of Rexburg, Idaho. He asked to go, we went for a drive, and he asked me, he's like, Dad, didn't you do some work here? So I took him around the town, and I'm going to share this experience, Zach, but I'm broke. I can't even, like, the cabinet shop's not doing well. We need lots more work. We can't get it. We're young kids. We look dumb when we show up to job sites. I have this epiphany in May of that year, that spring, that we didn't want to look like every other cabinet guy. Every other cabinet guy got out of his truck, covered in dust, pencil in his ear. He was the epitome of a guy who's really not a business owner, just a craftsman who owns a business, but not a business, right? That's who my competition was every day. And we decided, you know what, we're gonna change it up. We're gonna go get all nice logoed polos, nice sweatshirts. We're gonna logo up the trucks. We're gonna logo everything up. And wherever we go, we have to be in logoed up, nice clothes. My brother thought I was a little crazy. Okay, he's like, we don't even have money to pay rent, and you want to do this? Well, we do it. In a month later, when we're dead broke, I find out that there's an apartment complex going on in Rexburg, Idaho. And I had been at the wood store that morning, and I had heard that the guy doing them was way behind schedule, like 3 months behind. What does that sound like to you and me, Zach?
That sounds like opportunity.
That sounds like opportunity. And for a brazen young moron, a guy like me that just thinks that I've always been a little cocky. I hear this over this thing going on, right? That there's a big complex up there, guy's 3 months behind. I don't even waste any time. I drive the 30 minutes, jump right in the truck. Don't go back to the shop. I drive to Rexburg. I go to the apartment complex, and I didn't ask his permission, so I won't share his name, but he might not be being famous all over the world. So I roll in there. I knew his name. I found out because I just heard a few minutes ago. I roll in there and I tell the superintendent, I'll call him Bill. Okay. I said, hey, where's Bill? And of course the superintendent blowing me off. He's like, Bill's not here. I'm like, no, Bill's here. He's expecting me. Entrepreneurs sometimes have to just be real creative, right? I said, he's expecting me. He is? I said, yeah, where's he at? And now the superintendent's like, doesn't want to make the boss mad. He says, well, he's over in building number 2. I go in there, and now I understand it better. I walk in, and here's this 6'6", 6'7" man, really successful entrepreneur, sitting Indian style on the floor with his head between his hands like this. I now know that what he was is he's an entrepreneur. He's under immense pressure. He probably didn't have enough money for the project. He was way behind schedule. The bank's down. There's all kinds of pressure going on. And he looks miserable. And he's just sitting there like this. And he looks up, and I said, hey, I'm here to talk to you. I said, I heard you have a problem that I can solve. By the way, entrepreneurs, that's how we talk, right? And he said, I do? And I said, well, I hear you're behind 3 months on cabinets. And I said, no offense, but you just got the wrong guy working on this project. And he looks at me and he goes, you're the first guy to ever walk in here that doesn't look like he was building the cabinets 3 minutes ago. I thought, wow, maybe this was a good idea to look a little different. And then I shared things that I had no business sharing. I said, you're 3 buildings behind. Yeah. I said, we're a big operation, 3 of us. We're a big operation. I can build one of those fourplexes in 1 week, in less than 7 days. This is like nothing for us. It's a big deal for us. Okay. He calls my bluff, and he says, well, if you can build that fourplex in 7 days, you can have it delivered here, installed and finished in 7 days. You can have all the rest of the buildings. Hey, at the time we're doing maybe $200,000 a year in sales, and that contract's alone worth $3 million. And so I jump in the truck. I'm all excited. I leave. Problem is, we don't have, just to get the cabinets there, Zach, we don't even have a trailer big enough to haul the cabinets. I run to the bank, similar to you. No bank should give me money. And I beg the banker. I say, look, I just got this big job. I have to have a trailer today, like a big trailer. I don't even know how he feels sympathy. I don't know. I sold him a dream, and he gives me the loan immediately. I go to the trailer store, and in 2 hours from the time I left meeting the man for the first time, I got this big trailer. I go back to the shop. I tell my brother the good news, but now we don't sleep, Zach. We work 20 hours for 7 days, 3 to 4 hours of sleep for 7 days to cut the parts, to make it, to build them, to build the doors, to spray the doors, to go install them. Long story short, we don't sleep. We show up 8 in the morning on the 7th day, and the guy's, of course, waiting for us. And he turns to the superintendent. I said, I told you those guys were real professionals. He didn't know. He didn't know what we had done all week, but did we come through? Yeah. That man ended up giving us at least $2 million worth of work for the next 6 years. Everything changed then. And there's just, so when you say you started on born out of desperation, I understand. Like, I believe most people's entrepreneurial journey is born first and foremost out of desperation. We have to get to a spot where we go, I got to go all in. Like, I'm jumping off the diving board. I'm jumping off the cliff. I don't get a choice. There's no parachute. There's no escape hatch. That's what makes entrepreneurs usually win, is they burn the boats, And so those are just some of the things, that I've learned in the creation of people's first businesses that are common factors. Other thoughts on that, Zach?
Yeah, and a lot of people don't get it right. I mean, that's what's interesting about starting a business, right? Is I just had a young kid from the university here a couple weeks ago call me and ask me if he could come and interview me for a class he was taking, was an entrepreneurial class, which I think is interesting. The university's teaching a class on how to be an entrepreneur, right? It's like, what are you going to teach them? Like, what needs to be taught to an entrepreneur is just like, no fear, go do it anyway, right? And so he comes and he asks me all these questions about starting a business and being an entrepreneur, and which when they do that, when the kids come and ask that, it's always fun because it makes you reflect on your experience, and sometimes you forget about those. But so I'll tell you, my first experience, it wasn't very fun, Josh. I I got out of school with no debt, made good money, put away a bunch of money in savings, right? Eventually the oil field slowed down. I had to start looking at doing something different. But like you, I killed myself for a year and a half. I mean, I would drive from Idaho Falls or Rigby, where I was living, in a single wide trailer, by the way, on a dairy. I would leave the house on Sunday night or Monday morning early at 4:30 in the morning, drive over to Pinedale, Wyoming, 4.5 hours, jump in a truck, get the guys lined out. And then I'm sitting in the truck for 7 days, right? And I was 7 days on, 7 days off. I would get 3 or 4 hours of sleep in a 7-day period. Because my philosophy was, if I'm going to be there, like a lot of guys would work 12 hours and then they would, go sleep 12 hours. Like, if I'm here and I'm away from my family, I'm going to work. But the thing that I never figured out, and a lot of entrepreneurs never get out of this thing, like, if you really want to scale, and now looking at a lot of the businesses that we do together and some of the things, like the difference between now and when we started and the things that I've learned is I never learned how to get out of my business. Right. When I was young and first in college, I never figured that out. So I was tired all the time and I was stressed all the time because not only was I dealing with the bank, and by the way, the first time you sort of hit a home run, it's like if you've been broke and got no money and all of a sudden this money comes in. So I would get these huge checks from the oil companies and it shows up in the bank and you're like, woo, I'm rich. And then all of a sudden at the end of the month, you're like, where'd all the money go? Because all your fuel costs and maintenance costs, and we got to pay the employees and insurance and all this. So like you learn all these different things, but I never learned how to get out of the truck. Right? I always had to be in the truck, so I was driving plus trying to work on this whole thing. So I never grew that business to as big as what it probably could have gotten to. And I actually look at my brother. He's doing something very similar up in North Dakota right now, and I don't know if he watched how miserable I was and was like, I'm not doing that or whatever, but he's figured out how to do it, right? Where he doesn't have to sit in a truck and he's working on his business and not in his business. And that's where a lot of entrepreneurs start, is like for both of us, actually, it's interesting. You knew how to build cabinets, right? Because your dad had built cabinets, your uncle had built cabinets, and they had successful cabinet making businesses. So as a boy, you worked in the cabinet shop and you understood it, you knew it. My dad was a contractor. And so I worked with him building things and doing things, but it wasn't what I loved. So I actually went, in high school, and I'd go get these jobs with the farmers, and I'd drive trucks, haul potatoes and grain, and do all this sort of thing. So I had my CDL, I had a license. It was like, well, here's this opportunity. Here's necessity. Here's what I know how to do. And so as a quote unquote truck driver, I went and started a trucking company, right? And as a quote unquote cabinet maker, you went and started a cabinet shop. But I think the real challenge for an entrepreneur is to figure out, how do you get out of the seat of the truck, or how do you get out from behind the saw making the cabinets and work on the business and not in the business. And over the years, right, we've figured out a lot of those things. But, to the new person listening to this, if you're stuck there, I got a great book for you actually need to go listen to. If you're like, entrepreneur's great, but man, I'm tired. Hey, we get it.
We get it.
There's a book called E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber. It's an incredible book. Great. It talks about how to get out of your business. But, I think the other takeaway for me, kind of in both of our stories, and most of the stories that I hear about from entrepreneurs is, so I had a skill set, you had a skill set, but you'd never run a business. I'd never run a business.
No.
And so my degree is in animal science, Josh. Like, I know how to.
And mine's in political science, Zach.
Yeah, so it's like you know how to read legal contracts and debate policy, and I know how to make cows have calves and graze grass, right, and manage livestock. But I think that the biggest takeaway for me is, when you're going to go start an entrepreneurial endeavor, the biggest thing I hear from people is they say, I just don't know enough. And so they're like, I need to go get a master's degree, or I need to go do this. I'm like, why? Why would you go do that? They're not going to teach you anything. And sorry, academics, if you're listening to this, I don't think you have any value in the world.
He doesn't mean that. He means your value is different than our value. I don't know what you mean.
No, it's what I mean. So, because it's all theory, right? And then when you get actually in the business world, and like the business hits you in the face, everything you learned in college is like obsolete and 10 years behind. But the thing that's not obsolete is your ability to face fear and do it anyway. And that's what I've learned about the entrepreneurial way is you just have to look. Most people are like, well, you're not scared to do anything. I'm like, whatever. There's I'm scared to death, right? There's decisions that we're making every day. That's like, okay, if we do this wrong, we go to jail, right? Because it's either illegal or it's legal, and you have to do it a legal way, right? Or so you screw up, you go to jail. Tell me that's not scary. But the difference is you face the fear and you do it anyway. And I promise you, you might not believe this about yourself, but I do about me. I promise you, there are people who are out there that are far stupider than I am.
Oh yeah.
With bigger businesses than what I have.
Absolutely.
Because they have less fear, right? And so it's not about the knowledge and the education. What it's really about is it's about the ability to manage that fear, take courage, and just go start. And then you learn along the way, and not getting wrapped up in, well, I have to know everything before I get started, or there's some secret sauce about being a business guy. There's no rules. The only rules there are is what the IRS tells you, and the U.S. government puts as rules. You figure those out and operate inside of them. If you create value and someone's willing to pay you for it, you're an entrepreneur and you got a business.
I think, I just heard a couple of things in there, Zach, that I get asked this question all the time. I know you do too. Young people who are trying to maybe start a business or start it for the first time, or maybe an old person who's like, I'm done sitting in the truck for the city, right? And they say, it seems so easy for you, right? They look at you or me or others and they go, it's easy for you. It just comes to you. And I'm here to tell you, what appears easy is because we've had time and experience. What happens is that once you start a business, everything else becomes easier the second time. The second time you do it, it's easier. Now you have some new contacts that make it simpler. Now you know an accountant, you know a lawyer, you know somebody to help you with IT, you know somebody that can help with the website, you know somebody who can help with merchant processing. The third time you do it, it becomes easier. The fourth time, I don't even know. My wife claims I'm somewhere around 70. I don't know. I don't keep track. I was with the banker the other day, and he said, "Hey, I need all your K1s." And there was 14. And if you don't know what that means, you're not an entrepreneur, but 14 K1s. That means I get paid by 14 companies in the world that I have ownership in. Well, it gets easier because you become one better. You have less fear. Like, fear goes completely out the window once you've done something once, right? Like, I have a son that he's slow to warm up. He's hard to get to do things, but the minute you make him do it, he does it once, then he wants to do it. That's no different in business. Once you've done something once, it's simple the second and third time. And my takeaway from what you were sharing a minute ago is people just got to do it. They got to try. They got to start. And it won't always work. That's okay. It usually doesn't.
That's where you learn.
That's where you learn. I didn't say I had 70 K1s. My wife said I've started 70 businesses, right? That means a whole bunch of them. We learn some things and go, that's not going to pan out. That ain't going to work. Or, hey, the market changes, right? Market conditions change. And I'm sure one day we'll share with folks. Zach and I had one of the most successful, probably the fastest successful business I've ever been a part of. We only owned it, I think, for maybe 6 months. Maybe 6 months we owned it. And it was the most wild roller coaster of lightning growth you can experience on earth. But market conditions changed. Like, we'll share it sometime. I mean, Zach got kidnapped by the cartel, but whatever.
Yeah, that's true.
But the point is, market conditions change, lives change, opportunity changes. And so if you're willing to go through that roller coaster, right, it gets easier and easier and easier. And that's what makes it pretty fun. And so for us, like, it was one of the takeaways for me coming out of our conference this weekend, our 7K convention, was, man, there's so many awesome people out there trying to get their start in a entrepreneurial way, right? I didn't share, right? But probably the space that I learned the most ever for me was 22, 23 years old. At the same time at the cabinet shop, Zach, I know you did the same. We didn't know each other then. We knew who each other were. We didn't know each other. Both of us at the same time that we started, you started the trucking business, I started the cabinet business, both of us built network marketing downlines. And I would dare say I learned more about entrepreneurship at that time, building that downline. And if you don't know what that means, like, you gotta ask somebody, right? Like, but I learned more about entrepreneurial principles of how to actually be an entrepreneur and how to actually build a business and network during that time than even the cabinet business. And I use those skills
100%.
every day. Like, you're the same. Like, it was
100%.
And again, we were dumb kids that didn't even know any better. We just didn't know.
It's a good thing.
Yeah. Entrepreneurs, if we knew what we knew, if I had a gentleman sitting, I had a husband and wife come meet with me and pitch me a business proposal, which happens literally daily for us. I had them come sit down here right in my office, just on the couch, and they showed me an idea, and I so bad wanted to just say that absolutely is not going to work with all my wisdom, right? Now, knowing what I know about business, you couldn't give it to me. You couldn't give me the business, right? Because I just know too much. But I bite my tongue, Zach, and I do not ever say that. Because what that young couple really needs is to do it, to try it, to learn. It's not going to work amazing for them either. But who am I to tell them that they shouldn't try, right? Maybe they know something I don't know. Maybe they've turned over a rock that I didn't turn over in that space. And so I don't ever tell somebody with my knowledge not to do something that they want to try. I'll answer questions. And I know you're probably the same way on some of that.
Yeah,
it's not our job.
And the idea deserves to be fleshed out, right? It's like, I mean, there's lots of crazy businesses in the world today where I go, oh my heck, they're making money. They're killing it. I'd have never invested. That was the stupidest idea I ever had in my life, but they're killing it, right? It's like if the idea is there, it needs to be tried because you just don't know, right? And it's like we've said, in the trying of it, that's where the education happens. And if you fail, it doesn't matter. Like, I don't look at, I have a different vocabulary. Everybody says, well, businesses fail. I've never had a failed business, but I've had a lot of education, right? I've learned a lot of things. And, the other two things maybe I'll share as we kind of wrap up here that I think is interesting. The other thing I've noticed about business, Josh, business loves speed.
Oh,
you
amen.
need to hurry.
Amen.
Right? You need to hurry. Like, I don't know what it is, but if you dilly-dally and if you sit on it, like, number one, somebody else will go figure it out. Because once you think of an idea, it's out there, right? And I don't know how it works, but all of a sudden somebody else has thought of it. So business loves speed and it likes movement. Like, you gotta be anxiously engaged in moving and hurrying and solving these problems. And then I know you've been told this before, but I was thinking about this the other day. Because I've heard people say it, right? That, man, everything you guys do just turns to gold.
Not even true.
Yeah, well, it's not, right? Like, there's so many businesses that don't. But here's the thing. The ones that do, I was thinking about this. The ones that, how is gold made? It's lots and lots of time and it's lots and lots of pressure.
Yes.
Right? And so the earth makes gold over time with lots of pressure being applied to it. What does an entrepreneur do?
Yeah.
They hurry and they put a lot of time in it and they put pressure on an idea until it's either dead or it's done. Right? And so
when it's done, it's gold.
That's exactly it. Right? It's like you put enough time and pressure on something and you work at it long enough and hard enough, it will turn to gold for you too. Like, you turn it to gold. It doesn't just happen, right? I've never been lucky. Never been lucky.
There is no
what
luck.
it is.
There's no luck in business. Now, I do believe there's blessings, right? I believe that we divinely get given blessings, but luck doesn't exist to me in business. You
make it
hustle,
happen.
you work hard. Yeah, you go do it and you make it happen, and that's the beauty of it, right? And I know there's listeners out there today, Zach, as we close, that are going, man, I've always wanted to do something, and I just haven't done it, right? One reason or another. And I would just say, I really genuinely believe that every single person, man and woman, young and old, should own a business, side business, little hustle, little something, anything, a network marketing business, a reseller's business, something. It will teach you principles, and you will find out that you will make more money part-time by not watching TV and not doing mundane things and using just a few extra hours a day. You will better yourself, your family, your community, everyone around you if you're passionate about trying something, right? And I just say, if you're listening today, do it. Zach, I'm going to close with this. I want you to just share it. Like, you wrote a manifesto for us that's like, for the last 8 years has really defined it. It took everything that we believe in principally around business and shared it with us, with our sales force at one of the companies. It's the manifesto for 7K Metals. Inside of it, there's a statement that says, what about when they say stop?
We say go. We say go. Like,
that's it.
The world is going to tell you it's a bad idea. The world is going to tell you not to do it. The world is going to tell you not to try. Part of the reason this podcast is called the Believers Podcast is because that's what we really want, is we want you to know that there's someone else out there who believes in you. Like, I might not get it. I might not see your business or your idea or be like, man, that's in my mind going, doesn't work. But guess what? I still believe it ought to be tried, right? And you ought to go for it. And I'm like you, Josh. I would rather see somebody spend an hour reading a book on how to overcome their mindset or these, business ideas or principles and watch TV, or go to a university class, because you will learn more trying to start a business. Number one, you can't afford not to in the economy today. You have to have something else, right? But what it really does, it teaches you a lot about you. And what you learn about being a business owner, entrepreneur, is it's really not about building the business. It's about building you, because your business will never be bigger than you are. And as you build these businesses, you pay attention to yourself and what little fears you have and, all these things, and you work on them, your business grows, right? So everybody should be doing it. Everybody should be doing it.
Awesome, Zach. What a cool day. And thanks for sharing some of your experiences today. And if you're listening today, we want you to know that we believe in you. We believe that you should go out and you should make it happen today. And man, if that happens to be in one of our companies, right? If that happens to be with us at 7K Metals or SoundMoney or one of our other business ventures, great. If it's not, we are your biggest cheerleader, right? Like we just want to see other people succeed, want to see them win, see them follow some dreams. And so been a great day today with you, Zach. We'll see everybody next week on the Sound Money, Sound Principles, the Believers podcast. We'll let everybody go. Everybody have a great week. See you later.
All right. Thanks, Josh. See you guys.
See ya.